Well, I'd like to welcome everybody on this team meeting to our introduction to the planning department, their orientation, and I'll turn it over to Tanya.
Tanya Stern, Acting Planning Director for the record. We wanted to, again, welcome the new Planning Board commissioners and look forward to having this opportunity to talk about our department as part of your orientation. Hopefully, there are members of the public who are watching as well, so there might be some interesting information for them as well. Let's go to the next slide. So before I get started, also wanted to mention that I'm going to be kicking this off and also closing out this discussion, but in between, I have all of the division chiefs of the planning department as well as other staff who will help to talk about our work. And then I think another thing I want to mention, particularly looking at our organizational structure, which you have in front of you, one thing I've noticed in my role as acting planning director is oftentimes there are some who refer to the planning board and the planning department as one entity, but want to just take this opportunity to note that we are actually two separate entities. We are two separate organizations. And so today's discussion will be focusing specifically on the planning department. So if you look at the structure, we have the planning director or acting. In my case, I'm also still in my deputy planning director role. We have two deputy directors. The other deputy director is Robert Cronenberg, who is also here. Within the director's office, there are some additional staff. And then we have 9 divisions, each of which is led by a division chief. They will each introduce themselves when we get to the discussion about their divisions. In terms of our current year budget for FY23, our budget is $23.6 million, and we have just over 150 employees. Next slide. So I want to talk about a couple of major initiatives that really serve as frameworks for the planning department's work, and that affects all of the work of the department, regardless of what role our employees play in the department. The first is our department-wide equity agenda and planning. Now, I'm just giving you a quick preview of this. I will actually be talking about this in detail on Thursday as part of my planning director's report. This is a major initiative for our department that has been underway for a few years. We created an action plan that identified how the planning department, through its operations, through its planning functions, are making equity a foundational part of our work. And so as part of that, we identified a number of action items, many of which are already underway and have been implemented. Again, I will talk more about that on Thursday, but just wanted to note that, racial equity and social justice is very much a major, major part of our work, both as professional planners who are grappling with the history of discriminatory land use practices as part of our profession, and also looking at how we can better serve Montgomery County's very diverse population now and into the future. Next slide. Another key foundation for our work is Thrive Montgomery 2050, which, as you all know, was adopted by the County Council in October. This is our new general plan that is the long-range vision for the future of growth in Montgomery County. It is the foundation for future master plans as well as other planning initiatives by our department as well as those by county partners and other stakeholders who play a role in the county's future. Again, Thrive has 3 key objectives: economic health, community equity, and environmental resilience. These objectives are interwoven throughout Thrive and are reflected through multiple recommendations and strategies in our new general plan. And again, this is going to be really important, and we're happy to help the board get even more familiar with Thrive because, as you will see, as we are bringing forth master plans that we have underway right now, as well as future master plans and other studies and plans that we will be working on, all of those will be directly impacted by the recommendations in Thrive and are intended to implement Thrive over the coming decades. Next slide. So I'm going to jump right into the structure of the planning department. Next slide. Again, as I noted, within the director's office, in addition to myself and as acting planning director and our 2 deputy director positions, we do have additional staff, and we have a number of initiatives and projects that are underway within the director's office. One of which is the climate assessment tool for zoning text amendments and master plans. The board will be hearing more about that in December. We have a consultant that we're working with right now to help us develop that methodology. We will actually, or rather the board, will be responsible for doing climate assessments for ZTAs and master plans through our department starting March of next year. And so this is a new requirement that the county council passed this year. We also have a new project that we are just getting off the ground, incentive zoning update for CR and employment zones. This is also going to be a major project that you will see in the future. And then additionally, we have a significant placemaking initiative that the director's office oversees, as well as regulatory review functions that our office is directly involved in. And in terms of placemaking, I'd like to first turn it over to Robert Cronenberg to talk a little bit about that. And then after that, I'd like Paul Mortensen to talk about our design excellence initiatives.
Good morning. For the record, Robert Cronenberg, and welcome back again. So the placemaking initiative is one that we started almost 10 years ago in Silver Spring when we were looking for ways to implement portions of the master plan and see what could be done from a not only master plan perspective, but short-term goals to really achieve visions that were in the master plan, but also look at what the community interaction has been as these plans change over time. It changed, and we ended up getting money in the budget for that placemaking initiative. That changed and spread out to Bethesda, to White Flint, and then we finally decided that really to make it more equitable for the entire county, let's make this a countywide initiative. And so we have done some very significant and fun, but also meaningful placemaking activities in Randolph Hills, over by White Flint. Burtonsville was a very successful one, and we've done a number of them in Long Branch, Silver Spring, so they've in Bethesda as well, and they range from anywhere from weekend type activities that really focus on a vision for the master plan and how a certain area could be engaged and could be a little bit more exciting to see what could happen in those areas, to contributing to murals in some of our areas, our downtown areas like Wheaton. The one that was just recently painted over here on the wall, that was a contribution from our placemaking fund. Silver Spring as well, in Burtonsville, but also one that I would note, I think that is very very attuned to what we are doing today is the Fairland and Briggs Cheney master plan that is currently underway. We decided to host a placemaking event and partner with Better Block, which is a group that we've partnered with before, but also Department of Rec, the Regional Services Center, to see what we could really, what the community vision was for a specific area in that plan. So it helped us in our visioning process as we move ahead with the plan. So exciting because it was something new that we've done, but also gives us an idea of the community interaction, but also a longer-term vision for a plan. So we, a couple months ago, we did bring to the planning board a department-wide strategy and a framework for placemaking, because since we are making this more county-wide, we wanted to make sure that all the teams had some investment in that in terms of how we allocate not only the funds but the resources, because it's a major event and it's a lot of staff time, but community time and interaction that goes into those events. So you'll likely see that again. You'll see the framework and what is involved with that, as well as how we allocate those funds. At one point, we had about $100,000 each fiscal year to budget towards placemaking. We did drop that down to about 80 a couple years ago to be able to move some money around. It's definitely something that we're able to spend on an annual basis, which is good because we're getting the community interaction and the community support for that funding. But we definitely can bring something back to you that shows that framework and how we disperse the types of activities countywide.
Good morning. My name is Paul Mortensen, and I'm Senior Urban Designer and in the Director's Office. My background is in architecture and urban design. I'm a registered architect here in Maryland. And I was hired back in 2014 to come in and initiate a design excellence program for the planning department. Back in the day, and still today, actually, we were recognized in the county as one of the most wealthiest counties in the country, one of the highly educated counties in the country, and also one of the most diverse. And I think, you know, what our director at the time was discussing was, even though we had those qualities, the architecture and the urban design that was occurring in this county was not necessarily up, you know, at a similar level. And so the idea was to initiate a design excellence program that would help elevate all of the work that we do in architecture, in urban design, and in the development of the public realm. And so we put a huge emphasis on that. That program, with the Design Excellence Program, does several things within the overall planning department and also with the Parks Department. We support the different area groups. We support them through the regulatory and project review. So working with their teams to evaluate projects to help support them and to bring design into that dialogue. So when we're talking about a new project being developed in Silver Spring or in Bethesda or Germantown, wherever, we look at the context of the project, how the project not only will be a beautiful project for the county, but how it will support the public realm of the county. And so we work very hard with the different area groups on that. We also work with the area groups on their master planning and support them through the master planning work on the different areas. And oftentimes that work goes into design charrettes or workshops to look at, envision what those areas within the master plan could eventually be someday, you know, to kind of have high goals, set high goals for those different areas. And we've worked with all the different master plans since 2014 in that support. We also support the countywide planning and policy, particularly in policies that affect the public realm. And so dealing with street design, we give support to street design and right-of-way design, our parks, and the development and design of the parks, making them the focal points within the different neighborhoods, and particularly within the master plans that we work on. Housing and attainable housing, which is something that you'll be seeing this coming year, that we've been working with that. The incentive points in the CR zone. We did some presentations back in 2014 discussing how they were working today, initially with the new CR zone at the time. And now we are actually moving into actually evaluating those and coming up with new ideas on scoring points and where emphasis should be placed on the incentive zoning and the point system. We have worked on fire access in the county, and actually it's a very important thing with street design and community design, you know, kind of balancing having emergency access to a neighborhood, but also having a strong public realm within the neighborhood and safety, particularly with Vision Zero. And then we are working now with MCPS on the schools designs and site designs for our public schools, for the new schools, as well as the redeveloped schools in the county. The Design Excellence also has initiatives that just working with staff. We have the staff photo contest annually, and we just announced the winners at the beginning of September. We have that every year to really highlight the quality of our staff, the artistic and design quality of our staff, and it's been pretty remarkable, the photos that we get every year from parks and planning staff. We usually give 5 awards each year for that. We also do the biennial Design Excellence Awards, which we started back again in 2014. Our next awards, the next biennial awards, will be this October, and we work with AIA Potomac Valley So yes, 11 months out. We work with Potomac Valley AIA in their design awards, and typically they have an award every year in other counties. And then our year, we showcase those awards in Montgomery County. Our last awards event was actually held at this building. It was kind of the first really public event we had with a reception outside and using the building for the awards up here as well. We work on public art. The mural in the back of this building, which I think you've all seen, was an event that we sponsored with over, I think we had over 11,000 public votes selecting the winner for that, and it was a great event. And then you also notice, if you've been up on the 14th floor, we also have a mural on our back wall that was part of our initiative for that. Yes, and it's on the photo on this slide. We have worked on the design of this building. That took about 5 years of work before it was under construction, and also the decorating of this building. And one event that I hope you will go see this week, actually, we are now going to be installing our new conference table in the board's conference room this week, which was designed and built from black walnut that was taken from our site over at MRO in Silver Spring. We have recycled the wood and have put it into the design of this table. We create a photo library of precedents so that all the staff can use in their presentations throughout the county and with the community. We also support Makeover Montgomery program that you'll hear a little bit more about, but one of the main events for that this year was the closing plenary, where we presented 3 ideas from nationally recognized architects on the Transit Center for Silver Spring and visions for that, sort of, idealized visions on what that could potentially be someday. And it was very well received, and you can see those photos and actually the presentation of them on our webpage. I think that kind of covers everything that we're doing. We are here to support primarily, and also to really try to bring up the quality of design throughout the county. And I think we are seeing a lot of changes over the last 8 years now, and we'll continue to work on that. Thank you.
So next we're going to,
Can I just mention one thing?
sure.
You mentioned, I want to go back to the fire and emergency services part, and just point out that, at least in the part of the county that I am most familiar with, the health trips for emergency greatly outstrip now the fire actual visits, correct? And I think that's something that we should be helping the public along to understand. And maybe, we think about it as fire access because it comes from the firehouse. Yeah. Right. But that's, things are changing now, particularly with the graying of our population. That's going to continue.
Yes.
And I think that's a point that we can help the public understand by just how we label it.
Yeah, in those meetings where we have now come up with guidelines with the fire department and with permitting services, the county's permitting service office, we've come up with guidelines that help support some of the things that were very important. Typically for emergency access, a lot of, in general terms, the idea is to make streets as wide and easily, available for their trucks to get around corners very quickly, to go on streets as quickly as possible, and to arrive at a site and be able to access those buildings. On the other hand, on the urban design side, we want as narrow streets as we can have, right? So that we can have safe sidewalks. We want the corner radii in corners to be as tight as possible, so it slows down traffic. And so with moving trucks fast, moving cars slow, there's a competition going on. And so we came up with some guidelines to help settle that and to try to get the best quality streets as we can get. So it all plays into that discussion.
I would observe that I think one of the most important things there is the distribution of the services.
Yep.
And there's a tendency, I think, in the fire department to be consolidating into bigger stations, but bigger stations, particularly in the health service part, mean longer travel times. And as we urbanize and have more traffic congestion, that's slowing down response time. And I think that's a really important part.
Yeah, and you know, some of the things that we're also talking about, and we'll talk about in the future, but also smaller trucks perhaps that are more adaptable, that can get into, you know, tighter areas. So all that, I think, plays into it.
Well, thank you for tolerating my dive into that.
Sure.
It rang in my ear.
I just wanted to add to that discussion, just to tie back to Thrive Montgomery 2050, which talks about complete communities and having services closer to residents. I think that kind of speaks to what you were just talking about in terms of making sure that residents can access or services are accessible to them more easily, and looking for opportunities through regulatory reviews, through master planning, to reduce those long distances, so that we can, serve our residents a lot better. So next, we are going to walk through each of the 9 divisions, and each division chief is going to take over at this point. You're going to hear from divisions that support our department-wide functions, and we have several that do that, as well as our divisions that support both our county-wide as well as area master planning and regulatory reviews. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karen Warnick.
Hi, good morning. I'm Karen Warnick. I'm the Management Services Division Chief. I grew up in Hyattsville, historic Hyattsville. I moved out when I went to college at College Park, 3 miles down the road. Eventually, I did move to Montgomery County. I live about 6 miles from where I grew up, so I've gone far in this world. But my venture into working at Park and Planning started 30 years ago. I started in 1992. I have a background in finance and economics for my degrees, and I also got a degree in recreation, so working for Park and Planning seemed a very logical fit for me. I worked in management services for about 20 of those years, and about 10 years in the enterprise division, supervising all different kinds of golf courses, ice rinks, tennis facilities, and such as that. But about 8 years ago, I made the leap over to planning, and I've been very happy here ever since, helping planning. I tell everybody that management services function is the support, the underpinning of the department. We have great planners, they go out and plan, but we need to hire them, we need to have funding for them, we need to procure their contractors, and that's where management services all comes in, so that we can help take care of the employees and help move the department forward with its vision. We have 4 different areas in management services right now. We have human resources. We have a great management services, human resources manager, Robin Brittingham. She does a great job managing many different areas of human resources. We have employee services, labor relations, but right now a big critical factor is recruitment. We actually have a recruitment person, Mondrian Miller, staff person. She does a great job. We have about 14 vacancies right now, so it's about a 10% vacancy rate, which compared to other departments is not bad at all. I will absolutely take that vacancy rate, but we have filled 17 positions in FY22. Year to date, since July, we filled 10 positions already. We are hustling and bustling and moving out. We have about 4 more positions that we're about to fill in the next month or so. We're ready to go. But with that, we also do have some training. So we get new people in, we onboard them, we provide great training to them. We provide ongoing training in leadership skills, in technical skills, whether it's Adobe or Excel or writing skills. We have communication skills, equity training, absolutely all of that. We have a leadership institute that's running right now. We've got about 15 of our staff. They're either emerging leaders or even current leaders that want a refresher, and they go through a year-long Leadership Institute training class, bring in different instructors. They meet about once a month, and they have a project that they'll be working on. We also do diversity events. We have cultural heritage months. Right now, you might have seen some emails maybe on Heritage, Native American Heritage Month. That's going on in November. We just finished the Hispanic Heritage Month. So they keep coming around every year, and we provide a lot of those opportunities for staff to learn more about different cultures. Performance management, we just had a training this past spring, a refresher to teach people how do you do a performance evaluation? What's the importance of, how do you, both from a technical standpoint, but then also just giving people feedback on how they're doing. We have the mailroom, supply room, purchase card, petty cash, all of that's all in here. And the receptionist, we call it a welcome ambassador, who sits at our front desk to greet people. Our budget, $23 million budget. We do projections year-round. Anjali Sood's our budget manager. She does a great job, especially with the projections and tracking and making sure that we stay on target. Procurement, we have Jim Rotino. We're small but mighty. We have like one person in each of these roles, and it's great. Jim Rotino, he does our contracts and our RFPs. He does our on-call consultants. He oversees the copy center. And eventually, when we do have a Wheaton childcare, which we hope to put the RFP out within the next month, that we'll put that out. We'll get a childcare provider on board. They will have to develop the third floor of the facility. I don't know if you've been up to the third floor or not, but there's a big open space, about 6,000 square feet. And that'll be available. It should accommodate about 82 preschool children is what we're looking at. But we've been working on that for a long time, working with the county, DHS, their early child care initiative. And we've put in $500,000, they've put in $1.5 million. So we were going to be able to give the vendor $2 million towards the build-out and the startup costs of getting this facility ready. It'll probably take about 18 months, maybe 2 years to build it out. And so in 2024, we're hoping to be able to open this brand-new facility that would be used not only for our staff and the staff in the building, but also 50% of those available slots would go to families that meet state or local low-income, there's different programs that if they're eligible for those particular state or local programs, then they would be eligible for a reduction here. And so that would also suit them. It's great having the metro right next door, so it's easy access for folks who are commuting to work to either catch a bus, catch a metro, drop their children off, and go back and forth. We also have policy, so any of the policy development and implementation in our department, including ADA initiatives. We're really ramping up on that, doing some ADA training. We have emergency preparedness. We just, last year, new building, created an emergency action plan for the building, but also a continuity of operations plan. We rolled out training on that. As we were talking a little bit earlier, we were rolling out training on fire drill this afternoon. And then we will have our first fire drill of this building in a week or two. We're not telling people exactly when because, it's funny, people, when they know when the fire drill is, they mysteriously aren't in the building. Don't know where they go, but so we have that, sustainability and recycling. Also, before we moved here, we were in charge of facilities management at MRO, and we do still collaborate very tightly with the facilities management division in parks on what's going on our floors. So if you need a new piece of furniture, my division buys it. It's anything that we're buying, it's probably coming through my division somewhere. Any questions?
Yeah, I'll have one, right? 10% vacancy in positions. Is that related to sort of COVID Great Resignation, or is that just sort of the background that the department experiences?
Typically, we've been. It's during the COVID, nobody left. We had very few vacancies, in 20 and 21. And so I think, when things kind of shook out, people started going, oh, and they started, and it's a variety of reasons. Some people leaving for a different job opportunity. Some people are leaving because they're family. Some people because they're relocating. Some people retiring. Some people held off on retiring during the pandemic because they were working from home. They weren't sure what was going to happen. And then, when we came back to work, we had a number of people that said, I'm retiring now. And so it's a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. But part of that, we do at times backfill with term contract employees. It's not even so much backfill, but usually there's a new function. And it's like, okay, we'll bring in a term contract. So we've been using some of that lapse on our term contracts. But they can only stay for 3 years. So actually, we'll be talking about that a little bit in our budget session this Thursday, that we're going to actually ask to fill some of those term contract positions.
Okay, what I'm hearing you say is that 10% is not exceptional in terms of sort of general retention and?
For us, it is. Okay. We haven't been, usually we've been more in the 8% range. And remember, usually I would say we have about 10 to 12 vacancies.
Yeah. Okay. And most departments have an assumed lapse of about 7%. And you will see in other departments, it's far higher. So it's relatively good compared to other agencies and departments. But we'll talk about this a lot in budget, so.
I also wanted to add that we also have some vacancies due to employees who are moving into other positions, getting promotions, and so that creates an internal vacancy as well.
Of the 10 positions that we filled this year, 2 of them were internal. So it's like we brought in 8 people from the outside, but 2 people just, got that promotion, so that's good.
I have a couple questions. I heard you talk about diversity events, but I'm curious about your diversity recruitment and outreach efforts and personnel.
Oh, absolutely. We have several different avenues that we reach out in diverse manners. We have the historically black colleges and universities. We definitely reach out to them for their new students. We also have PON. I'm trying to think of what it's some kind of an opportunities network. I forgot but it's PDN. Anyway, they take our advertisements and they blast it out to multiple different diversity locations, networks, websites. And so we don't have to go to each one. We just go to this one. We pay, it's a service that we pay a fee for each year, and we blast it out all the way. We just lost our picture. Up there it is. Okay.
So,
We also share it with the American Planning Association, which is the professional organization for planners, has a division. It's called Planning in the Black Community. I'm a member. I'm sure we have other staff members, and I know we send our openings to them as well to send out. So we use a lot of different outlets, but we definitely make sure that they get in front of more diverse pool of applicants.
yeah, let me suggest also that you tap into the sororities and fraternities because they'll have their own professional networks as well as the local NAACP. I appreciate HBCUs, but there's just a world out there, and I'd really, like to know that there are real and stringent attempts to diversify the staff here.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to send you some information on what we do.
That'd be fine. The other question I have is about, you said there's a leadership institute.
Yes.
So how are people selected? Is it by recommendation? How does that work?
So this is our second Leadership Institute since I've been here. The first one we put out and said self-select, or it could be selected by, recommended by a division chief or their supervisor. On this particular go-around, I'm not sure what it was, whether it was the COVID or anything else, but we had about 20 slots and we had 15 people apply. We reached out to people and said, we think you should apply. We got some of those people, but people are very busy right now, and there was a lot going on with Thrive and everything else that we didn't have as many folks as we wanted to have. So we took everybody that applied.
So
and
how does it
encouraged more
feed
people.
into, promotions, or, what's the connection like? If I'm an employee, why would I want to take on this extra thing?
So,
Go ahead.
So let me speak to that. So there is not a direct tie from the Leadership Institute into a promotional opportunity. Anytime we have a position that's open, any employee can apply for it and they have to compete. But the perspective that we take is that through the Leadership Institute, as well as a wide variety of other trainings that we offer employees throughout the year outside of the Leadership Institute, is intended to help position our employees to be able to pursue promotional opportunities. The Leadership Institute, I think, it's particularly focused on that topic. But again, our department offers a lot of professional development training for our employees, and we definitely encourage them to pursue other opportunities beyond what we offer as well. I mean, I would have to say of all the places where I've worked, we probably offer the most training to our staff, and I know we definitely encourage our staff. It's in their evaluations, an expectation that they take professional development training. If I can also mention, this was before you arrived, Commissioner Branson, but In my introduction, I mentioned that on Thursday, as part of my director's report, I'm going to talk about the planning department's equity and planning agenda. And I gave a quick preview of it, but as part of that, we have a mandatory requirement for every planning department employee to take 8 hours of equity training every year. It is in their evaluation. And so that is something that is part of our larger equity and planning initiative. And again, that's not even just for planners, it's for budget staff, it's for any employee, because we want to make sure that this is a part of how we actually run our department. So I just wanted to offer that as well.
Okay, thank you. You may know I was the director of procurement for a little while here. So I need to understand, how did you say you have one person that does this? Did you say that?
Yes.
Okay. So, so I'm a little confused about how, one person can do that as well as do the analysis and the sort of acquisition planning that is really kind of necessary for procurement. I mean, procurement just isn't buying stuff. It's it's figuring out the life cycle and the operational costs of a thing. So are there any thoughts about how that could be? Well, first of all, how much do you buy a year? And, do you follow the procurement rules of the county? And, what is it, how do you address acquisition planning and life cycle, things like that?
Can I start with that last question? Mm-hmm. So in addition to our procurement specialist that is a part of the Management Services Division, he and Karen work very, very closely with the Commission's procurement team within Central Administrative Services. Every procurement we do actually goes through them, and so we work in very close coordination with them. But in terms of the acquisition planning, I think maybe I'll approach it at a broader perspective. He is not responsible for doing all of that for our division, for our department. We actually, amongst the senior management team throughout the fiscal year, we meet on a regular basis to think about, are there consultants or other projects or things that we want to procure? We especially do that particularly in the spring, once we have an idea if there's any year-end funding that may be available. And so we do a lot of that planning amongst the senior management team. And so once we make a lot of those big decisions, that's when we bring in our procurement specialists to actually start to get the ball rolling so that we can get those procurements done efficiently. Karen, is there anything you wanted to add to that too?
In terms of acquisition, buying things, we don't buy a lot of things. We don't, because we don't own this building. Planning doesn't. In particular, Parks takes care of the building. So from any kind of, when we were at MRO, we took care of the MRO building. But here, Parks takes care of that. So the only thing we acquire with, we buy supplies, we buy IT equipment, and that's the IT division actually buys, any IT equipment is purchased by the IT staff, not by my staff. We occasionally will buy a vehicle, but from other than that, we're buying supplies and services. So mostly we're doing services. And as Tanya said, the divisions will say, hi, we need to procure a contract to do whatever, XYZ. And they'll do the research behind it. They'll write the scope of work. My staff will take that scope of work, make sure that it fits our procurement policies. We don't follow the county's policies. We follow the commission's policies. So we work with our commission staff at Central Services. We say, here we have this RFP ready to go. We hand it over to them. They put it out on the street. They run the procurement of it. But we're just kind of pushing it through.
So what are the commission's diversity goals when it comes to procurement?
I'd have to check on that because I know that we do have, frequently there's like a 10% has to be small business. Depending on, it varies depending on what it is that's being purchased, but they do have small business goals that they're trying to meet. But I would have to look at them specifically just to give you a
Yeah, I'd
very
be
accurate
interested in
answer.
seeing that. I mean, because, diversity and equity isn't just about, who you hire. It's also how much is baked in the cake, you know? And so if you're buying services, those are consultants, and so that's another way to bake things into the cake, okay?
And we'd be happy to get that information or to have Central Administrative Services, provide a briefing to the board members to understand that.
All right, thank you.
I
Yeah,
just want
that's
to
it for
add
me.
to
Thank you.
what Commissioner Branson said. I recall from long ago, and I hope it's still the case, there were actually advantages given to minority business who proposed their services. I don't know if that's still the same, but I would be interested to know if that is part of the structure. I'm talking about back in 2008 to 2016, so it may have changed, but I would be interested to know that. Another point that I wanted to ask about, and I don't know if it's on your agenda, but I have to drop off earlier, so I just want to get it out there, even if we don't talk about it today. I have an understanding that the technical writers were moved from the planning department to legal. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. They do the direct supervision, and the commissioner's office pays for the technical writers. But they're still technical writers. They're still doing the same things. It just changed the reporting responsibilities.
And actually, to
But are-
add another clarification, they were actually not part of the planning department staff. They were part of the planning board, the commissioner's, the commissioner's office.
But does the staff still have the same access to them, in coordinating the work that then goes to the technical writing? In other words, is the access still there for staff to collaborate with them?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. And then the only other question I had, and I didn't want to ask these things in public session because it seems like, I don't want to make accusations. I just want to understand. I also understood that the administrative staff went from 5 to 2. And I'm not sure how that's working, but I would like to know, we don't have to discuss that in public forum either, but I would definitely like to know if that's enough. I know, we used to have more, so
That's
that was it.
under
I just want to.
that's under the commissioner's office, not the planning department.
But Commissioner Presley,
Okay.
this is Robert Cronenberg, Commissioner. This is something I think you're going to see with the budget discussion that'll be coming up in terms of how that's been coordinated and communicated with Chair Zients and what the need is really. I mean, I think
Okay.
we're doing a little bit of a trying to understand what's the current functions right now. And our office, even though they don't report to us, they report to the chair. We're trying to understand how we can better communicate with them and how we can interact so that the commissioner's office can do what they need to do, but we also provide some interaction and some services that help our department, which in turn help the commission overall.
Okay,
That'll be
that's
coming
great.
to you
Thank
soon,
you.
though.
Also to clarify.
Okay, thank you.
To clarify, it did go from 5 to it's actually, there are 3 positions. So it went from 5 positions, the 2 technical writers were transferred to legal, and so there are 3 positions remaining. There are currently 3 positions, one's just currently vacant.
Okay, thanks very much.
If I could jump in quickly, this is Allie Myers with the Office of the General Counsel. Since there may have been some confusion, I do want to clarify that this is a public meeting that is being live cast. So this is a briefing that's open to the public. So we are currently in public session.
Okay, I should know that. But I think my point there, and I'll reiterate that for anyone else who's tuning in, is I have no intent to come in and seem like I'm trying to tear apart the structure. I just want to understand so that as we go forward, especially Robert, as you mentioned with budget, that there's a good foundation to know what is currently in place and what is needed.
So why don't we continue?
Yes,
Unless there's other
please.
questions?
Okay, good morning. I am Jason Sartori, and I am the Chief of the Countywide Planning and Policy Division here at the Planning Department. And I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm not from here originally. I traveled a little bit farther, although not too far. I grew up in New York, but I have been a Montgomery County resident for over 20 years now. I served as an intern here at the Planning Department, just like Chair Zients did, and I believe several others at the table here did back in the day. I came back in 2010 as a contractor to work on Makeover Montgomery, which Paul mentioned. and then came back as a term contract employee in 2016. And I've been a merit employee and the chief of the Countywide Planning and Policy Division for almost 4 years now. Vice Chair Presley, you may recall our division used to be called the Functional Planning and Policy Division, and we changed the name a few years back, mostly in deference to our fellow divisions making, if we were the Functional Planning Division, I wasn't sure what it said about the other divisions. So we are now the Countywide Planning and Policy Division, but we all get along. So we have 27 planners, historians, engineers, and administrative staff in our division. We're broken up into 4 different groups, essentially. The first is our historic preservation team. That's led by Rebecca Ballo, who will speak a little bit about our HP efforts. Rebecca's been with us for about 4.5 years. We have our multimodal transportation planning team. That's led by David Ansbacher, who's behind me here. David is about to be celebrating his 13th anniversary with the commission. Our travel forecasting and monitoring team is led by Eric Gray, who has been with the commission for 38 years. And then we have a collection of other planners who report directly to me. They handle everything from housing to infrastructure, zoning, environmental. They kind of make up their own group that is not as formally structured as the others. So I want to highlight some of the things that we do, and I think you'll see us coming before you a lot in the coming weeks and months. But with regard to transportation planning, we have a team that kind of maintains our transportation network data, does modeling and forecasting for all of our master plans and for other projects and other efforts that we have. We prepared and have been implementing the Planning Department's Vision Zero work program. With that, we created a community toolkit that communities can use to understand and make recommendations and for the things that they see in their community that can help improve the safety for all users of our roadways. We created an interactive crash map that we've published on our website. And one of the most exciting things that we've just completed was our predictive safety analysis, which was an effort to take a look at where we have seen crashes occurring across the county, in particular fatal and severe injury crashes, and identifying the characteristics of those intersections and those street segments to say, what does that tell us about the crash risk at other places where we may not have yet seen crashes? And we are now rolling that out and using that and working collaboratively with DOT and the Vision Zero office to use this in ways to prioritize some of the improvements that we see that we might require a developer to make or that might go into the CIP. Just being able to understand the dynamics that are at play in different neighborhoods. Our pedestrian master plan is something that we'll be probably bringing to this board in January, asking you to take the working draft that we are currently reviewing internally and preparing that as our public hearing draft. That is the first pedestrian master plan that we've done here in the planning department, and we have, about 4 months ago, we released publicly our draft policy, design, and programming recommendations, and we've been getting feedback through online tools as well as community meetings and other focus groups that we're going to be doing over the course of the next few months too. And so we'll be bringing that to you soon. That's been something we've been working on for about 3.5 years. One of the key things, actually, I'll show you on the next slide for that one, but let's stay here for 1 second. What you do see on the right-hand side of this slide is an example of something that we're working on through our bikeway branding effort. So this is we're working with a consultant to develop wayfinding concepts for our extensive bikeway network across the county. Really something that we hope to make people feel more comfortable and more confident in being able to get out on their bikes and know that they can get from point A to point B without having done it before and do it safely. And encouraging more of the casual users to become more frequent users, and people who may not ever to feel comfortable to get out there for the first time. On the housing side, one of the things I want to highlight on the list there is the Innovative Housing Toolkit. This is something that we are working with a consultant right now on. They are reviewing the regulations that we have in place in the county to beyond zoning, to say, to see what things may be impediments to new types of housing that we want to see brought to the county. And, something that we talk about a lot in Thrive and through the conversations that occurred around Thrive. We're also they're working on conceptual designs for more attainable types of housing, more missing middle types of housing. They're identifying innovative construction techniques and materials that can be implemented that might make housing more affordable, and innovative and environmentally sustainable site design techniques are part of what they're looking at as well. And so that's something that in the spring we should be able to bring to the board. Also mentioned on here, the adequate public facilities. Every 4 years, we're required to update what used to be called the growth policy, the annual growth policy, the subdivision staging policy. It is now called the growth and infrastructure policy. We thought it really directly tied what it is that we're looking at. We look at infrastructure and its ability to, and it's how well our infrastructure, how adequately it meets the needs of our development that we're improving. And so we look at it primarily from a transportation and schools perspective. We can go to the next slide. Environmental, well, I can't not mention the code amendments. So you see there, I've listed 5 different sections or chapters of code that we will review. We're not necessarily making recommendations on these. In some cases, we are with the zoning code, as the chair knows very well. But when something comes forward that relates to our historic preservation code or our housing code, transportation code, these are things that we will review and provide an overview to the board to potentially provide comments to the county council. In particular, the subdivision code and the zoning code is something that we work more actively on. We're required with the zoning code to provide the board's recommendation to the county council, or the district council technically. The environmental guidelines, things like streams, floodplains, and erodible soils, those are guidelines for development there. We do other things like our septic tiers map that will be coming before the board shortly, as well as a review of the county's water and sewer plans. And then we've listed there are different functional master plans that we work on, so that's where the name functional came from, right? But it's I mentioned the pedestrian master plan before. The image that you see at the bottom there, this is one of the major efforts that we undertook to kind of work on that plan is an analysis of every single street segment and intersection in the county of how comfortable, we call it the pedestrian level of comfort, based on whether or not there are sidewalks, how close the sidewalks are to the road, what the posted speed limit is, whether there's parking, how far the intersection might be, gathering all that information to assess a level of comfort for a pedestrian across the county. Next slide. And before I hand it off to Rebecca to talk about historic preservation, I do want to say our team also provides support to each of the area teams on their efforts with regard to master planning, and whether it's for schools or transportation or housing, elements of those master plans, but also in review of development applications. So I will now turn it over to Rebecca.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Ballo, and I'm the supervisor for the Historic Preservation section under Jason's leadership in the Countywide Planning and Policy Division. My team has 7, we're a team of 7 with 1 new contract historian just starting with us this morning. And we are a team of historians, architectural historians, planners, and an archaeologist. So our team, we provide support to the county's Historic Preservation Commission. So for those of you who are not familiar with the HPC, they are a separate county executive council appointed commission. They have quasi-judicial authority to review and approve or deny historic area work permits. And Chapter 24A of the county code and then the HPC's own bylaws lays out the procedures by which the HPC reviews the historic area work permits. It is our office that does the intake for the HOPS in coordination with the Department of Permitting Services. We prepare the staff reports, and then we bring the cases forward to the HPC. We process approximately 400 work permits a year, and the HPC meets about twice a month. They meet 22 times a year, every other Wednesday evening in this hearing room. The HPC, as its own quasi-judicial board, they have a separate attorney. Walter Wilson, out of the county attorney's office, is our attorney for the HPC, and he helps us with technical advice, with legal advice, and also if there is ever an appeal of a historic area work permit, those do not come to the planning board. Those go to the Board of Appeals and then on up appealing through the court system from there. The HPC also has a very specific role to advise and recommend the planning board and the county council when it comes to amendments to the master plan for historic preservation. That is the document that enables the designation of historic sites and historic districts in Montgomery County. We just took through in fall of 2021 the designation of our first mid-century modern historic district, which built on a work program that had dated back 25 years to the late 90s when we started to do our first resources surveys of post-war, historic and architectural resources in the county. And we will be bringing forward additional master plan amendments within the next year, focusing on mid-century modern architecture and also focusing on African American history and resources in the county. Our office also administers the Historic Preservation Tax Credit program, where we process in any given year, depending on the size of the projects, $3 to $6 million in eligible tax credit projects, and we work directly with the HPC and also with the county's Department of Finance on those applications. We are also the certified local government for Montgomery County, which is a specific legal designation under the National Historic Preservation Act. So we work on Section 106 and NEPA reviews. So for example, as part of all of the documentation for the Managed Lanes project, you might see specific, letters or comments that come from me and come from the Parks Cultural Resources historian that go, directly to like SHA or federal highways as part of those undertakings. We also manage the burial sites inventory. So in 2017, the County Council passed 2 new laws to create a burial sites inventory that is managed just by the Planning Board. So under those laws, the Planning Board was required to create an inventory of all known and unknown burial sites within all of Montgomery County. So some of these sites are in Rockville, for example, or Poolsville. This is a countywide inventory. And we will be bringing you our annual update in May. Dr. Brian Crane administers this program for our office, for the Planning Board. And in May, we bring to you an annual report about burial sites that should be added, sites that should be moved, new information about the program, and then update about our outreach and our work with the public. We also administer a small historic markers program. We were heavily involved in the street renaming project. We have been working on a very exciting project we're calling Mapping Segregation that we will be bringing you an update this winter on that, looking at the effects of de facto and de jure racial segregation in Montgomery County, mapping racial covenants within the Down County, and we have some really great research on this. We worked closely with the GIS and the Research and Special Projects team and their staff. We'll be giving you an update on that shortly. Our office also collaborates with the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service to receive grants and to undertake new research on Asian American heritage, on LGBTQ heritage sites. We will be bringing forward our first standalone National Register nomination for an LGBTQ heritage site to the State Board in February. I look forward to giving you an update on that. And our team also authors books. If you do not have a copy of the Montgomery Modern book, I will get you one. And we have authored several books on county history and other, we have some other monographs as well. And our office also works very closely with the director's office on the department's equity agenda for planning. And we work also very closely with all of my colleagues here at the table with the division teams on mandatory referrals, site plans, and other sector plan and master plan amendments for their cultural resources write-ups and their history write-ups. So Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a couple questions. On the pedestrian comfort survey, is the police department a part of that overview?
Well, not with the pedestrian level of comfort was something that we gathered the data internally. So in largely by looking through Google Street View and then going out and visiting sites to make sure we understood. It wasn't an assessment of crime in those areas, but more just the infrastructure that's in
No, I'm not
place.
asking about crime. I'm just, if anybody's on the ground on pedestrian intersections, right, it would be the police, right? So, so I'm just wondering whether, whether their input had been sought.
Sure. Well, I believe the crash data that we get through the police, and I'm looking back at Dave, right? Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And I will also note that with a development application, one of the things that we ask developers to do is they do their assessment of the environment around their site is to verify the information we have too. So we're constantly, if there's anyone who looks at our website and says, this is not accurate, we're welcome to take in on the correction, so.
Okay. So on the historic preservation front, let me just say that I used to live in a Cape Cod that I modified, and then I sold it. And so now I live in a mid-century modern that that from the outside, from the front, looks like a Cape Cod. It's some kind of weird thing. Anyway, so I'm very into the whole mid-century modern thing now. It's become my new hobby. On the mapping segregation project, I'm a little curious as to how, policy-wise, that will fit into other discussions, right? I mean, I probably any black person over 70 can tell you where the areas were back in the day, right? But that's not, and that's all, great to know. I think when I was on the council, I had something to do with mapping, with asking you all to map historic areas of black communities in this county, right? So, so I'm not new to that, but when it comes to mapping segregation and where the, the restrictive covenants were and that sort of thing, what is the vision of how it fits into the greater narrative? Because it's got to do more than just tell us, where we couldn't live. We know that already. So so what? Well, that's the question. How will it fit into the greater housing policy dynamic moving forward?
Thank you, Commissioner Branson. That's an excellent question, and that's what we're working on right now with the project. I won't get too into the weeds for it because I know I want to be respectful of the time for all my colleagues. We started the project because we were getting a lot of questions from COG and other research groups, talking about what were the communities in Montgomery County that were redlined, and we have the map of several dozen African-American communities, kinship communities, places that are still here, places that are not here anymore, where people have dispersed. But we were really trying to drill down and answer that question, but then pull out the actual, the factual information from the deeds. So the way the project was scoped was to look just inside the Beltway and to actually pull all of the subdivision plats and to pull the deeds and the covenants to see, specifically on the ground, what were the subdivisions, what were the parcels where there were racial covenants, not just against African Americans, but also Jews, people of Chinese descent. It really ran the gamut. And also we were looking at architectural covenants as well, where there were sometimes minimum thresholds for how much a property you had to spend, for example, $5,000 or $3,000 to build your house. So we wanted to map all of that, have that information. Our role as the historians, we really felt, was in the data gathering phase of it. We looked around the country at, what is the Brookings Institute doing? What is the Federal Reserve doing in the Midwest? There are a lot of national level researchers and historians that are studying this issue that are starting to come out with some policy recommendations, again, at a very high level. And that's the other reason we partnered very closely with our research and special projects team who do this kind of work in demographics. So we envision, perhaps the policy recommendations from this are probably 2-3 steps down the line from where we are right now, again, which was just in, what is the factual situation on the ground inside the Beltway? That's what we're preparing to present to you in the next few weeks. And we really do look forward to having a discussion about what are the potential policy implications of that.
Please continue. Who goes?
Good morning. Elza Heisel-McCoy, Chief of Down County Planning for the record. I started with the department in 2006 and reviewed development applications. I led a couple of sector plans in Chevy Chase Lake, the Bethesda Purple Line Station, became regulatory supervisor and chief right around the same time that Jason did. Before that, I'm an architect by training and worked actually in the same office as Paul. So the Down County area is basically the portion of the county inside the Capital Beltway. We have the established urban centers of Silver Spring, Bethesda, and Friendship Heights. We also are home to very diverse communities, including Silver Spring, Tacoma Park, Littonsville, Tacoma Langley, and Long Branch. All of the county Purple Line stations are in the Down County area, and we have done sector plans for all of those from Tacoma Langley around to Bethesda. Right now, we have, in terms of active plans, we are finishing up the design guidelines for the Silver Spring downtown and adjacent communities sector plan. The design guidelines will be coming to you in draft form in December to get your comments, and then we'll be moving forward with the design advisory panel with you in January. And then in Tacoma Park, we are doing a minor master plan amendment. So rather than revisit the entire master plan for Tacoma Park, this area is specifically looking at the Washington Adventist campus and Maple Avenue down to City Hall. Any questions on those? Fantastic. So then in fiscal year 22, we reviewed over 1.9 million square feet of development in Bethesda, Friendship Heights, and Long Branch. I think what's interesting is, when we put these numbers together, it's really an indication of, in the fiscal year, what sort of the economic outlook, what the market outlook is for each of these areas. And I think that certainly in previous fiscal years, we've had higher numbers. But I think, there are still a lot of projects, particularly in Bethesda, that are coming through the process. Now that we finished Silver Spring, I think we'll be seeing more. So we had 700,000 square feet of non-residential development, over 1,400 new dwelling units, including 288 new MPDUs. So in countywide, the minimum for moderately priced dwelling units is 12.5%. In Bethesda, that minimum was raised to 15%, and then with the Silver Spring plan, that minimum is raised to 15%. So the projects that have been approved in the Down County, the range of affordability goes from 15% to 100%. The project that is illustrated there is Park Montgomery in Long Branch. It's the first sort of real project that we've gotten in Long Branch. I think the delays in Purple Line construction, when we started doing the planning, it was, we have to get ready because the Purple Line is coming. And then right around Chevy Chase Lake, it was, is it coming? Is it not coming? And then, okay, it's coming, but then, so there are a lot of stop and go. So this is a very exciting project that's 100% affordable. The orange building on the right is an existing affordable multifamily building that the affordable housing provider is renovating, and then there's new units in sort of a former parking lot on the left. So the average affordability is 20%. So we're very happy with that. And that's what's happening Down County. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'm seeing no questions.
Good morning. I'm Carrie Sanders. I'm the chief of the Mid-County Planning Division, and I have been with the department for about 5 years now. My background is I actually started at the city of Rockville. I was there for 5 years, and then went to the city of Alexandria, where I served for 7 years with my last position as Deputy Director of Transportation. So I have primarily a transportation background, but have definitely broadened that background while I've been here with Montgomery Planning. I live in Montgomery County. I've been living here for almost 12 years. I have 3 kids in the Montgomery County schools. And to talk a little bit about Mid-County, we are essentially in what I like to call the heart of Montgomery County. We serve areas such as White Oak, North Bethesda, Aspen Hill, Kensington, Montgomery Village, Rock Spring, and the Great Seneca and Shady Grove areas. We closely coordinate with the cities of Rockville and Gaithersburg, who have their own land use authorities, but we coordinate closely with them. We often are involved in work that builds new communities. So when we come before you, we're largely going to be talking about sort of larger scale work that we're doing and community building. And we actually have 8 of the 13 metro rail stations in our planning area. So we have a lot of work around the metro stations as well. Talking a little bit about the last fiscal year. So we had a busy year. We actually had 2 different master plans adopted by our county council and a study completed. You may be familiar with the life sciences industry in Montgomery County, which is quite robust. There's over 300 different life sciences companies in Montgomery County and 36 federal labs. And so we're a big leader in this industry. And to support the communities that support that industry, we worked on the first phase of the Great Seneca Plan, which is a plan area that's sandwiched by Rockville and Gaithersburg, has 7,000 life sciences jobs, so twice the amount of the county overall. And that was a really important plan to get adopted to help us with the first phase of it to allow some new development in the area while we work with the community closely on what the vision of the plan area is going to be. We also had the Corridor Forward I-270 transit plan adopted by our county council, which we coordinated with the functional planning and policy division on. And that was a really important plan to set the groundwork for transit projects and prioritizing them. Since we did that effort closely with DOT and the state, we have seen funds go to those projects specifically for bus rapid transit. So that's been a real success story. And then lastly, we completed a study where we looked at the 2010 White Flint sector plan area and looked at short-term actions to advance that plan, which some of which have already begun. So that was an important effort in that area. What we have underway right now, we have, as you all know, we are anticipating 200,000 people coming to the county over the next coming decades. And so we're really working with communities to plan for that growth. We are initiating our second phase of the Great Seneca Plan. We're also looking at downtown Wheaton and doing a study of downtown Wheaton, how we can create some short-term actions to advance that plan. So we'll be coming to you shortly on the reports of that study. We're also working with the community on the University Boulevard Corridor Plan, and we just are in the early stages of that plan, which builds off a lot of the things we've been talking today about Vision Zero and safety and traffic safety, and also looking at our transit corridor and how we're going to plan for transit in that corridor. And we'll be working, I would say, very closely with the community on this effort. We had a public meeting last week that was really our first engagement, and we had over 70 participants. We have a meeting tonight where we have 110 people registered. That's our virtual version of the meeting. So we're happy about the engagement that we're having, and Kosi Yearwood is our project manager and is doing a great job at getting out into the community. Speaking a little bit about regulatory work, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. We are quite busy, so we have regulatory planners that are really working to review a lot of life sciences projects over the last couple of years. We've seen quite a few of those. So we do track our life sciences review times. We want to make sure that we're reviewing those in a timely manner because we understand that the life sciences industry requires some special attention, has unique building requirements and also unique timing requirements. So we are tracking that through our Speed to Market initiative, which our Deputy Director Kronenberg will probably speak to you shortly on, I expect, giving you an update on that. But we do see a lot of projects in Mid-County to do with life sciences. And we also have a big housing review that's happening specifically with affordable housing projects. And so you'll be seeing sort of larger scale projects come to you that have significant affordable housing components. And we also work on speed to market and tracking those review times to make sure those projects are delivered in a timely manner through our review process. So that's a summary of what we have going on in our Mid-County Division. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. You'll get them as you go through the regulatory process, I'm sure, but not today, I don't think. No. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Patrick Butler, I'm the Up County Division Chief. I've been with the Commission for about 15 and a half years now. Started on the information desk. I worked as a planner 1, 2, and 3. Was a regulatory supervisor in Mid-County with Carrie for a few years, and have been the chief now the last couple of years. So with that, you see the Up County area in green. It is the largest of the divisions in terms of land area. We have 3 sections within Up County. The master plan team is led by Don Ziegler. The implementation regulatory team led by Sandra Pereira, and the zoning public projects and agricultural initiatives team, which is currently directly led by me, hopeful to add a supervisor to that section in the near future. Up County is comprised of an eclectic mix of communities and contexts, including some of the most diverse communities, not just in Montgomery County, but the United States. We have the Germantown, Clarksburg, and Only Town centers. We do suburban retrofitting, mixed-use development, what we refer to as parking lots to places, including various bio-life science uses along the I-270 employment corridor, Century Boulevard, Seneca Meadows Parkway, Milestone, and Montgomery College in Germantown. We do retrofitting and redevelopment of shopping centers, such as the Cabin John Shopping Center in Potomac, the Burtonsville Shopping Center, slated be under review and coming to you shortly. So. We have the re-emerging 29 corridor communities of Fairland, Briggs, Cheney, and Burtonsville, several rural settlements and activity centers with their own unique histories, such as Sandy Spring, Ashton, Cloverly, Olney, Brookville, Laytonsville, Damascus, Barnesville, Poolsville, and Dickerson. We have several special protection areas with impervious limitations to protect watersheds within Up County. We have all but one of the entire rustic roads program in Up County. And lastly, but certainly not least, for at least a one-slide overview of Up County, we're home to the approximately 93,000 acre agricultural reserve. To implement our various agricultural initiatives, we participate in monthly coordination meetings with the Office of Agriculture and the Department of Permitting Services to support agriculture and various agritourism proposals. And then you can see the recent plans and events that have occurred that we've accomplished over the last year or so. In current plans and events coming up here, we have the Rustic Roads Functional Master Plan hearing scheduled for November 17th. We're going to provide you a briefing to give you a little background and context as to how we've arrived where we're at, and then to hopefully give you a little bit better context and understanding as you take in public testimony on the 17th. We also have the Fairland and Briggs Cheney Master Plan that's underway. We've recently presented big ideas and some preliminary recommendations to the previous board. We'll be bringing the preliminary recommendations in staff draft later, probably end of this year, beginning of next year. And shortly here, again, about the end of the year, beginning of next year, we'll begin the Clarksburg Master Plan amendment as well that's in our work program. And obviously, we have the several advisory committees that we support within Up County. Thank you. In addition to our busy master plan work program, we have an immensely busy implementation and regulatory program with approximately 140 applications that were either under review or completed review within the last year when combined with our environmental plans. This past year, we completed a range of application types, such as adaptive reuse of a historic structure on Rustic Road, retrofitting and infill development, bio-life science uses, various solar applications, mixed-use development, greenfield development, rural development, and single lots in rural and in ag zone areas. So we truly do it all in Up County. Go to the next one. And then I think Robert really covered this quite well, but I did just want to give a shout out to the Up County team, particularly Angelica Gonzalez, Don Ziegler, Dominique Costley, and really the entire division that stepped in and helped the Fairland Briggs Cheney community put on this placemaking festival. Really what was unique about this festival is that it's the first time we've done a placemaking event in the middle of a master plan update. Wanted to do that for several reasons, but in particular, really wanted to, while we were formulating our recommendations, demonstrate to both decision makers, the public, the community, the types of ways that open spaces that within the plan area could be activated, could be redeveloped in the future. This particular site, located between the East County Regional Services Center, the Department of Recreation, and the BRT station there at Briggs Cheney Road, is slated for redevelopment for affordable housing. And we're hoping that, this was a much larger event, that some of the elements, some of the components could be, located on this site in the open space area that would be required. But again, wanted to show the larger plan area, what could be possible, what sort of services, amenities, recreational activities that the community is in need of. And that's all I have.
Can I just mention briefly, in, I believe, last week's Monday morning message that I sent out to planning department staff, which all the board members should receive, I included a link to the recap video for the Fairland Briggs Cheney Placemaking Festival.
Just two notes, one for my fellow commissioners, that the meeting on the 17th, it starts at 6 o'clock in the evening. So it's our first night meeting. Be ready for that. The other thing that we'll take up at future meetings or discussions is the time period for regulatory review, since the statutory time is 120 days and your average time is 156 days. We'll have to talk about that some, but that's for a future meeting. Just fair notice. All right.
Hello, this is, I just wanted to mention one thing, Paul Mortensen again from the Director's Office. I forgot to mention that in our group, we are working on the placemaking as well as I think I mentioned the CR incentive point system zoning. Atul Sharma is in our group, and he's sort of leading that effort on both of those events. But the placemaking, he's been, I think, a very strong contributor in all the different placemaking efforts that we've had in the county over the last couple of years. So I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned his name as well.
Thank you. Who goes?
Good morning. Carrie McCarthy, Division Chief of Research and Strategic Projects. I've been at the commission since 2016. Before that, I spent 15 years as a consultant working on real estate, economic development, public policy, master plans around the country. And so it's been great to come in-house and work for this fabulous agency. I have a team of 8 that we are the data nerds in the department, and we have a couple functions. We provide support to the area teams and other department-wide studies on demographic information, population characteristics, housing characteristics. We spend a lot of time tracking the economy. We work with MCDC. We do a quarterly economic indicators report with them. We want to make sure our plans are grounded in economic realities parts of the county. We also spend a lot of time tracking real estate market conditions, office, industrial, retail, et cetera. We develop the forecast in conjunction with the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. We're working on a big update right now. And lastly, we kind of do other special projects that come through, like we have supported a co-location initiative that's been ongoing for a couple years. Next slide. One quick thing, so we have two chiefs named Carrie McCarthy, Carrie Sanders. I have glasses, Carrie does not have glasses. Yeah. Fun fact, legally our first names are both Caroline also. My email is Caroline, her email is Carrie. But we are used to getting mixed up. But yeah, there are two of us. So. My division has also spent a lot of time working on equity issues and understanding, again, different population characteristics in different parts of the county to help us understand, how we're making resource decisions and are different populations having access to the same resources. We developed a tool called Equity Focus Areas as part of the general plan update. We're refining it right now with an analysis we're calling a Community Equity Index. That's sort of a more multifaceted approach to looking at more data to understand different conditions in different areas. And my staff, actually, we also have two performance factors related to equity. The training one that Tanya mentioned at the beginning, and then we also have an equity and research one that everyone needs to be thinking about equity across all of the research we do. We are, this just shows some of our greatest hits. We're going to bring back the trends in racial and ethnic diversity story map in a couple weeks to give you an overview that looks at racial and ethnic change in the county since 1990. It's a very innovative mapping tool we've developed. But we've also recently done studies in mixed-use development. We did a retail and diverse communities study a couple years ago that looked at specifically neighborhood ethnic retail. And then we've also recently done a bunch of work on neighborhood change that identified that actually concentration of poverty is a greater problem in the county than gentrification. And so we're happy to present or discuss more of these studies with you at any time. And I'm happy to answer any questions now, or we can talk about research all day. So I know we don't have a lot of time.
I'm sure we'll have questions as the topics come up. Thank you.
All right, good morning. I am Christina Sorrento, and I am the Chief of the Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division, better known as IRC. I've been with the commission for 14 and a half years. I was actually in the Office of General Counsel as an attorney for the majority of that time. I have been in this role for a year and a half. And I like to think of our division as kind of the customer service division, but we're also the ones that are making everything happen behind the scenes, especially with all the regulatory plans. I have 3 supervisors that are amazing that help with all the work that we do. We have Angela Brown, Joshua Kay, and Neil Bronstein. Some of the things that we do, we have the information counter. So we provide all the information to the public. They can come in and talk to us. They can call us. The folks that work the information counter, they know more about everything in this county than I can ever imagine, because they have to know everything that somebody might ask them when they come in. So they really get to learn all the little pieces of what we do. We take in all the fees for all the plans that we review as a department, and we do all the intake as well, to make sure that the plans that are submitted are really complete and ready for review by the area teams. We run the DRC. I am considered the DRC chair. That's the Development Review Committee that meets every other week on all regulatory plans that are then going to you to review at your Thursday meetings. We do the peer review. I am the chair of the peer review as well, and that is kind of a last-minute check that all plans come through that have a group of peers that sit on it to make sure that we're really crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's when it comes to the legal requirements of the plans and the findings. We do the noticing, so that's really important. So we notice all the public hearings for the planning board, and we mail all of the planning board's resolutions. We also do all the addressing for the entire county, and we were heavily involved in the street renaming project with that. We do all of the record plats, so you won't see my team that often in front of you, but you will see, our record plats. And so once in a while, Steve and Jay will be in front of you with the record plats. We also do all the post-approval documents, so all the legal documents, the bonds, the agreements, all the stuff that needs to be in place before somebody can pull their building permit and be on their way to actually start breaking ground. We also do building permit review to make sure that they've checked the boxes for the last things that we are looking for. DPS does their own building permit review, but we do it on our end for the things that the planning department and the planning board have required. We also, a huge part of what we do is inspections and enforcement. So we are out there meeting with people in the field on a daily basis. We inspect and do pre-construction meetings for all the regulatory cases, but then we also do forest conservation enforcement. We do subdivision enforcement, preliminary plan enforcement, and we do site plan enforcement as well, but we have an MOU with DPS where they do the front part of the work for us, and if something rises to the level that it needs to go to an enforcement hearing, we will take that back and bring it to you as an enforcement hearing. So we do have enforcement hearings when we find violations and we cannot get them resolved. We always try to find some resolution, but once in a while that isn't possible. And in an enforcement hearing, it goes to administrative law judge first, and then it comes to the planning board for the final decision. We also do a lot of public education. We're about to send out all of these mailers to show everybody who has a conservation easement on their property that they have a conservation easement, what that might mean, and give them some contact information in case they have any questions about that. So we're going to send those out in batches because I expect that we'll have a lot of questions. In addition to all of that work that we do on a daily basis, we also do a lot of legislative work. We are solely responsible for the forest conservation law. We're considered the forest conservation law experts. So we do all of the forest conservation law updates at the county level, and we're involved when there are, when there's changes that they're looking at the state level as well. Most recently, we have done a no net loss bill that is at the county council right now. So the planning board did already review that and make a recommendation for approval and send it up to the county council. And that is looking at getting no net loss across Montgomery County for forest. So we have done that. We also do subdivision legislation. So we did back in 2017, as Chair Zients was intimately familiar with, we did the rewrite of the subdivision regulations. And more recently, I think it was 2020, 2021, somewhere within the COVID era, we did an omnibus kind of update on that, on those regulations. If you can go to the next slide, please. We currently also have the administrative procedures for development review also up at council that the planning board has also looked at. Another exciting part of what we do is Reforest Montgomery. So we have a team, a small but mighty team, that uses the fee in lieu from our forest conservation law. Basically, when a developer comes in, they have to do a certain amount of mitigation under the forest conservation law. Sometimes they are not able to do that in many different ways, and so they pay into a fee in lieu. We take that money, we have an obligation to spend that money. And so we take that money and we provide things like free shade trees. We right now have taken the equity focus areas that Carrie's team has pulled together, and we are trying to focus the free shade trees into those equity focus areas. That's something new that we are doing just this October, actually, or we're into November now, but the October and November, the fall planting season, And it was very successful to the point where we're going to have to probably add more money towards the free shade trees because equity focus areas were really, people that live there really wanted these trees. So we want to make sure that it's available to everybody, but we're glad that we're able to kind of, give a lot of trees to those particular areas that are in need of trees for sure. We do Relief the Reserve, so that is an interesting project where we go to the Ag Reserve, work with farmers. We work with Conservation Montgomery in that as well. We've partnered with them, and we work with the farmers to put conservation easements on their farms, and we will plant those conservation easements with the funds and the fee in lieu. We plant existing easements. Sometimes we have conservation easements out there that don't have forest for whatever reason, and we will go and work with private property owners to replant those. And we're also now creating new easement areas on private land as well, and that's a new initiative that we've just started. We plant in parks. We also take these really big trees. It's amazing to see. And we move them into parks. They're the kind that you have to have the special truck. You'll see it go down this huge tree coming off the truck, and we'll plant those a couple times a year in parks. So we work closely with parks with that. And we do the forest mitigation banks as well. So we manage that. Forest mitigation banks are that they're handled by private entities, but we manage basically approving them, making sure that they are taking care of forests correctly, and approving the credits, withdrawals, and all of that, and making sure that that's all done the way that it's supposed to be. So this is right now we have one person full-time and a contract person as well that manages this whole program, so. Any questions?
Thank you. Oh, we have a question.
Yeah, I have a couple. So is there a map of the forest conservation areas? Is that on here somewhere?
Yes, actually, it's not on this slide, but we have a pretty, a really interactive website. So you could go on there, you can see all the forest conservation easements, you can see the banks, you can really go down, and you can even see where we've planted some free trees. We have a lot of that all online so that everybody can see it.
Oh, that's great. So these forest mitigation banks, you said they're privately owned areas. So how do you manage those? What exactly do you all do?
So we make sure that they are planted up to specs that are required by the law. We make sure that they're being maintained appropriately before we can even allow credits to be sold. And then we also track the amount of credits that are being deducted from the bank. So they have a certain amount of acres, and then, that equals a certain amount of credits depending on a number of technical things. And we deduct that from those banks. And those banks remain under easement. So, we have enforcement authority over them as well.
Thank you. Who goes next?
Good morning, Bridget Breuer, Communications Chief. Hello. I am from Burtonsville, I'm proud to say. I've been with the commission for almost 9 years. My background is broadcast journalism and marketing. And I used to be with the City of Rockville with Commissioner Hill and other staff here at the Planning Department. Just wanted to go over 2 slides. This is a visual of the Communications Division role. And before I explain it a little bit, I just wanted to mention the team that I manage is made up of 10 communications professionals. We handle graphic design, publications, mapping, the websites for the Planning Department and the board, media relations for the department and the board, all the audiovisual needs of the department and the board, including the streamcast of this meeting, HPC, DRC meetings, full commission meetings. We've only been a new division since 2020. We used to be a team under management services led by Karen Warnick. And since that time, we've been really focused on being more strategic, focused on equitable engagement, not just racial equity and social justice, but also as it pertains to ADA, translation, And I'm happy to talk to you more about all of this because there's a lot to cover. But with this visual here, I just wanted to point out that really things at the top can't be effective unless we have the foundational elements in place. And so the brand at the bottom, I'm not just talking about a logo, it's about how other people talk about us, about the department. It's really the foundation for everything that we do. It's everyone's inclination sometimes to jump right to the tactics and tools. You know, that's pretty fun to get in the sandbox of communications, but we must first have the strategy in place. So that's what we try to do with everything that my colleagues have talked about, all their plans and projects. They all have a communications plan that's approved by leadership, and it's really our roadmap for how we work with the community and ensure that it's equitable. If you could go to the next slide. And this is our communications plan process, just in very basic terms. It starts about a year before a program gets on the work program, a project gets on the work program, and it's about the budget request. This is new, and actually I give credit to Elsa Heisel-McCoy for working with us to get to this place because we need to make sure we have enough funding in place for translation, advertising, special tactics that we might need for a particular plan area. And so we work with the teams to make sure that there's an approximate sense of what we might need, knowing that we haven't started the project yet. And then from there, we do a deep dive with the teams with the pre-scope of work, and it's really all about our audience-focused communications and really understanding demographics and working with Carrie's team to understand the language needs, how do people want to receive information, what do they value. And then the post-scope of work, after the board approves the scope of work, that's when we finish the communications plan. And during that whole process, we're trying to evaluate it, and we're trying to be better about making sure that it's not just all the upfront work, but that we are really putting in lessons learned so that we can help other teams and other plans and projects so that we can learn from each other. So I just wanted to share that. And Tanya, Acting Director Tanya Stern, will be talking more, like she mentioned, about equitable engagement on Thursday, but we have a lot more to discuss if you have any questions. Thank you.
I have a quick comment, which I just wanted to recognize that your department won a very prestigious set of awards this last week or two.
Thank you.
And I would also like to congratulate all of you. I'm always impressed by how much of a national leadership in best practices and good work this department gets recognized for regularly.
Thank you very much.
But you've got the hot potato, so I just wanted to make that.
Thank you.
Ditto. Next.
Good morning, Vince Hugh, Division Chief IT. I'm actually new to the commission. I've been here 8 months. Prior to this, I was out of state for a year, and before that, I was with HHS, Montgomery County Government, for 14 years. Made a lot of good friends, still a lot of friends at TEBS. We keep in touch all the time about technology, some of the projects we're doing, some of the things we're being private partner on, so we still keep in touch. We have we're unique actually. We support both planning and parks departments. Division is 40 people, give or take merit and contract staff. Large division. We have 6 sections. 2 are core. The planning tech team and the parks tech teams pretty much computers, the network on the back end, data centers too. ISGIS, Chris McGovern handles that. Lane's application, the Ezra GIS applications, Hanson E-plans, GIS maps too also. Program management, Barb O'Donnell handles that department, that section. She's been here 38 years, right, Barb? 38 years on the commission. In her section, we handle the budget, procurement. We spend a lot of money, Karen, so a lot of money from IT. And also, we also manage our outsourced help desk too. RecTrek is actually new. It's not new, but it's been moved from enterprise to ITI, within the past year. So RecTrek's Acting Montgomery. If you're a resident in Montgomery County, you can reserve events, through Acting Montgomery. We have about over 500,000 accounts right now that we manage, so we're a busy division right there. Newly, it's cybersecurity. We had folks who didn't focus on cybersecurity. It's a sort of a semi-focus. In the next 2 weeks, in a few weeks, we're gonna create a new section under ITI. We're gonna have 2 new roles, an IT manager focusing on cybersecurity and analysts too on cybersecurity. I think it's probably the most important part of ITI. We all get hacked in, we all go down. So ITI is a bloodline of pretty much parks and planning.
If I can be the first to acknowledge ignorance, what's IS in
Information systems.
GIS?
information systems and geographical information systems.
Well, I know GIS. What's IS?
Information systems.
Information.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
So highlights on a 10,000 feet level, we shoot for world-class standards. That means network uptime, phone uptime, and server uptime. This year, we're on track for 7,000 tickets closed. So 7,000 trouble tickets, requests, moves, need a mouse, keyboard, my computer went down, 7,000 tickets, give or take. We manage about 90 plus, almost 100 applications. Many are in the cloud, some are on site, on premises. We have quite a bit of projects delivered. They're not shared, but a lot of things are enhancements on the back end. We don't really share, but it'll keep the lights on pretty much. We use great technology, Cisco, Microsoft, everything at state of the art we use. So we're innovative. The innovation part of ITI, we're innovative. We're keeping the lights on. The way I see it, it's not glamorous, but we're also looking for enhancements too, trying to harden our backbone, make sure everything's redundant, resilient. So innovation part of it is also a part of our title. So we're looking at basic new technologies, anything that's outdated, we're going to look at new technologies, how we can support the business, parks and planning. So we focus on also, we're focus-driven, mission-driven, and there's 5 excellence pillars we're looking at. There's people. I think people is the most important part, of the organization, in my opinion. Provide great service. Finance also, got to make sure we're stewards of finance. Our budget this year is about $7.5 million this year for ITI. Innovation, obviously, we're looking at new technologies all the time to make sure, we support departments, and process-driven too. Questions?
I just thank you for getting the commissioners up to speed on technology and embedded into the new system to us all. It's been very, very helpful, and we thank you for it.
I think you saw Jake and one of our lead desktop techs the first day of here, so we'll make sure you're taken care of.
Thank you.
Can I just add really briefly, in my deputy planning director role, which I still have, ITI is one of the 5 divisions that I oversee, along with management services, countywide planning and policy, research and strategic projects, communications, and I might be forgetting something else. But in any event, I mention that because in that role, I sit on the Commission's IT Council, which is a committee of senior leaders from all the Commission departments to provide strategic guidance on the Commission's IT operations, particularly on what we call the enterprise side, that's the Commission-wide systems. And so this is something that I, meet with Vince on a weekly basis with the one of the deputy directors in the Parks Department, because again, we co-share this department. So I'm very, familiar with a number of the IT initiatives in the Commission. And I also just wanted to mention that, ITI really is an outstanding division. All of our divisions are outstanding, but the reason why I'm calling it ITI is because when our department had to go into mass telework because of COVID, we were able to pivot very quickly because our ITI division already had the systems in place for us to be able to make that transition without any interruption. I wouldn't even say miss a planning board meeting. There was a planning board meeting that was already scheduled not to take place, I think because of the spring break. But we had no interruptions, essentially. And so, when Vince talks about this division, making sure that we have what we need and being forward-looking, we were able to deal with that emergency because this division is always very forward-looking. So I just wanted to call you all out because they make it possible for all of us to do all the work that we do.
And one more thing, I thank you too again, but we will get into enterprise level IT issues when we review the CAS budget this week or next week, whenever it occurs. But there are some major things coming up. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else?
I'd just like to follow up for just a second to Commissioner Branson's question regarding our recruitment efforts. We do partner, and I apologize for not having this information earlier, with the, it's called the Professional Diversity Network. They have 35 partners. Their platform, is a centralized job distribution and media outreach platform for diversity recruitment of talent. The organizations, just a few of them, there's 35 total, are iHispano, Black Career Network, Women's Career Channel, Military to Career, Ability Careers, Pride Careers, Black data processing associates, Greek diversity. So we do reach out to the Greek fraternities that way. International Association of Women, Technical Latino, NAACP, Veterans Exchange, and so on for 35. So that is how our, rather than us trying to figure out which one to go to, we subscribe to the Surface, the Professional Diversity Network. They blast it out to all of these different places.
I appreciate that. I think my point here is that and I'm sort of familiar with that network. They are very nation focused. They're a national thing, right? And so I am absolutely certain that that if you want to grow local employment, you need to look at local stuff, right? And so that's what I'm who knows? I have no idea whether our local branches of sororities and fraternities are tuned in to these people. I have no idea, but I know our local branches of sororities and fraternities, of which I am not a member of any of them, by way of disclaimer. I know they are tuned into each other, right? And I know they are tuned into what happens in the county. I don't think it. I understand you say you can't pick. You can't pick and choose people, but really you can. And so, because when the word gets out locally that you all are making an effort, then folks start to distribute things amongst themselves, and they will contact you and say, we want to be on your list. I mean, we're just talking about a few keystrokes. I don't think it's a big deal. I really don't. I mean, we have, in another, I belong to the local NAACP, right? One of the things we do is that several departments who are trying to expand their diversity routinely send us notifications. Our network does include all of those local groups, both, actually Black, Latino, and Asian, that are operating in the county, right? So that's all I'm saying to you, is that diversity cannot be, the search for inclusion cannot be, this thing out there. It has to be here, it has to be real, it has to be local. And if it's not, then it's not really happening.
So we are in full agreement with you, and we are happy to add additional organizations to our distribution for our job announcements. I will also mention that for myself, I don't do it for every job because sometimes I forget to do it, but there are definitely times when, because I'm a member of APA's Planning Black Community, our local chapter, Latinos in Planning Division as well, and Women in Planning Division, I also send out and will forward job announcements to those networks so that they can also reach a more diverse pool of planners as well. So we're totally in agreement.
We also advertise through Handshake, which is advertises to 1,400 colleges and universities, including 56 HBCUs. So we are trying to reach out from that standpoint. We have been done college fairs as far as Philadelphia,
Morgan
Baltimore,
State.
Morgan State, DC, UDC. We just did one recently at Howard University. So we are also reaching out locally, but also broadly.
So we have a couple of more slides to wrap up. I know we're over time, so I will hit on this briefly. So as was recently mentioned, our department is very proud to have received a number of awards over the last few years. These are some of the awards that we have received to date this year, as well as last year. Commissioner Hill, you mentioned the Markham Awards related to communications. We're very, very excited to have received the American Planning Association National Capital Area Chapters Leadership Planning Award for Community Outreach and Engagement for the equitable engagement we did for Thrive Montgomery 2050. We also, in the previous year, received an award from another APA division, the County Planning Division, on the growth and infrastructure policy, which was referenced earlier, the schools element. We've received an award on our equity focus area story map, and I will talk a little bit more about the equity focus areas during my presentation on Thursday. our Complete Streets Design Guidelines, which we developed in coordination with the Montgomery County Department of Transportation. And the building that we are sitting in right now, the Wheaton headquarters, has also received some awards. So, this is definitely something that, our department, we're very, very proud of our work. We have an outstanding staff. And we do have a reputation outside of this region. When I've gone to I was at the American Planning Association National Planning Conference this spring, where I was a speaker along with Rebecca Ballo on our street renaming project, and went to different sessions, and people from other parts of the country have said, we're aware of your department, we see the type of work that you do. And so we're very much about innovation in the planning field, pushing ourselves to do new and different things, and also in sharing that work within our profession. Next slide. And so I want to close out by noting that we partner a lot with multiple agencies within a county, within a state, within a region. These are a number of the agencies that we partner with frequently, but there are many more. We also hold monthly coordination meetings with MCPS and MCDOT. We have staff from multiple divisions to talk about our various projects and how we can coordinate more strategically with those departments. And we are also members of multiple interagency committees. The ones that I have listed here are just a selection. There are many more. I will mention, Christina Sorrento mentioned the Development Review Committee. I, along with some other staff, are also part of the Interagency Climate Leadership Team that supported the development of the Climate Action Plan and now its implementation. We are also part of the Maryland Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, several COG committees, Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, the Planning Directors Committee, Housing Directors, Region 4 Coalition, Travel Forecasting. We're also part of the Purple Line Corridor Coalition Steering Committee. So this is something that's very important for our department. We do not do our work by ourselves or in silos. We are always looking to how we can support those departments in achieving the goals that we also seek to accomplish, and also looking at how we can influence those departments to accomplish the recommendations in our plans, but also how can we help them accomplish those recommendations. So again, this is very important for us. And next slide. So that concludes our presentation. We're very happy to have had this opportunity again to provide this orientation. As you know, I'm sorry, you have a question?
Our other Commissioner
Okay.
Hill has one.
Yes.
Actually, it's more of a comment, and go ahead and finish your presentation because it kind of bends around. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say we're just happy to have had this time to walk you through our department, the work that we do. As you can see, we do a lot. There's certain projects that I think members of the public may hear about, but our department is involved in a lot of different functions in our county. And again, we have an outstanding staff of almost 150 employees. And again, in my role as acting planning director, I'm extremely proud of our staff and the work that we do. And we're very excited to be able to work with you all as the new planning board members to continue this work.
That's a good segue. I beg your indulgence to the chair and the executive director just a minute to mention, while you're all here, my practices. And I do that saying I'm one of 5 people up here, and I'm fully aware that I'm an interim commissioner to bridge the time frame that's here, as well as I need to work through senior management. But one of the things you'll notice distinctively about me is I ask questions in session. And I just want to mention to you my motivation in doing that. First of all, I figure if I have a question, the public has a question, and I'm the public's voice here. So that's a major motivation. I also like to look for the edges of issues, because that's where unresolved things can appear, and just finding out, well, maybe the issue goes over here, not over here. And poking things often reveals things, and I'll probably do that more with the testimony of not the staff, but the people before us to see what goes with that. I also am good at prompting testimony and getting it on the record when I think that's appropriate. Testimonial fact is also part of the legal record, and we need to draw that out at times to illuminate things. And it's also just a question of engagement with the public. If they take their time and effort to come here, engaging them, I think, is how you encourage people to participate more. So I think that's good. And then we've only had one meeting cycle so far, but there are a couple issues I just want to mention that I've already observed. One is I would like to hear about the public input. And I know that staff will feel at times they've taken care of this issue or whatever, but I'd like to know what the issues the public are raising even when it comes through. Another part of that, this is just an observation, I don't know about it yet. I'm a little surprised at the number of time extensions that is appearing for us, and I think that's a bigger issue. I'm a little worried that we have a misfit between our regulatory timeframes and the pace of the work that's going, and that's causing that. And I will look at that, but it's an issue I may be addressing. And then this is a concern, and I brought it up during my council testimony, and I was not disqualified for bringing this issue up, so I assume that they may not support it, but be interested in inspecting it. I'm very afraid that smart growth is faltering in Montgomery County. And Ms. McCarthy, you said, you used the words economic reality in your data analysis, and Mr. Heitzel-McCarthy, in the last session, we kind of touched on this when you brought up the fact that you didn't think the retail in that particular location was viable. But the fact of the matter is that, in my opinion, smart growth has three angles, right? You need to combine services, residences, and employment in a relatively compact area to get people out of their cars. And it seems to me that the services and the employment part, the online apocalypse is happening. We may just have an assumption built into smart growth that more retail exists or should come on the line than is actually supportable. And I don't think we know yet the impact on employment space from COVID, the COVID enforced switch to remote working. Is that really going to impact our employment space? But those work together to the point that I'm not sure our former assumptions about smart growth are working going forward. And particularly when we offer incentives and planning structure that are based on getting smart growth, if we're not getting it vertically or horizontally, those incentives aren't really appropriate anymore. And that was Commissioner Branson's point, I think, in the last session, that this will be the big challenge, I think, for the next decade or so in planning, especially coming out of that COVID era with the employment situation, is how do we make that genuine to the public, right? Because otherwise, and one more aspect, and I'm sorry for going on, we need housing, right? So not only are two of the legs of the stool getting shorter, one's getting longer. And that's part of that challenge that I think we face, because if we're just building housing everywhere, we're basically recreating bedroom communities, right? And that was the very point for having smart growth, was not having bedroom communities, right? And not having deserts of service spaces. So I think that's a big challenge to me, and I'm really interested in engaging you all about it. And again, I will be asking questions, and you can decide to answer those and participate. You can also say, well, Mr. Hill's here from the interim, and that's okay too. Thank you. Thank you for indulging.
Thank you. You should know that the commissioners respect staff. We respect the organization. We wouldn't have come here if we did not. And we understand this is a little bit difficult for everybody. And sometimes we ask your indulgence. But we will ask you questions. and that is no disrespect. I think Commissioner Hill said it pretty well on what our expectations are in that regard. But this is a remarkable department in a remarkable county, and we hope to go forward one decision at a time. We can only look at what we can look at. We only have a short period of time. Mr. Hill recommended a decade's worth of work here. So we can only do it one little bit at a time. And I thank you for the presentation, and I think we are adjourned.